into the area. Suárez, and he threads it. Looking for the overlap. Alba inside. It's Messi! Again, the menacing lineup.
Barcelona's most iconic attacking era did not begin with confidence. It began with doubt. A club built on possession and control started to question whether its identity could still survive modern football. For years, Barcelona dominated matches not just by winning, but by owning the ball, the tempo, and the story of the game. But football evolved. Opponents grew stronger, faster, and more pragmatic. European teams learned how to absorb pressure and strike quickly. Barcelona still had Lionel Messi, the greatest player of his generation, but relying on one man increasingly felt fragile. When everything depended on Messi, failure became inevitable. Messi continued to perform miracles. Goals from impossible angles, chances created from nowhere. Yet football is collective, and slowly Barcelona were exposed for leaning too heavily on individual brilliance. Entire defensive systems were designed to stop Messi. When he was contained, Barcelona looked ordinary. When he was missing, they looked lost. The truth hit hardest in Europe. Champions League exits were no longer narrow defeats. They were humiliations. The loss to Bayern Munich wasn't just about the scoreline. It symbolized the end of an era. It showed that possession without penetration was no longer enough against elite opposition. Barcelona knew change was unavoidable. They didn't want to abandon their philosophy, only evolve it. They needed players who could share responsibility, stretch defenses, and punish teams that focused solely on Messi. The first step came from Brazil.
Que Deus benish.
Y que Dios nos bendiga.
Visca Barça.
Neymar arrived as more than a winger. He was unpredictability, flair, and confidence. In Brazil, he thrived in chaos. At Barcelona, he had to adapt to structure and to sharing the spotlight with Messi. The transition wasn't easy. Every touch was analyzed. Injuries disrupted rhythm. Critics questioned his fit. But quietly, Neymar changed how teams defended Barcelona. His presence forced defenders wider. His dribbling demanded attention. Space began to open. Still, Barcelona weren't complete. They created chances, but lacked a natural finisher. For years, they relied on fluid systems and false nines. Now, they needed a striker with hunger and brutality. That brutality arrived.
El cual cuesta un poco más el tema de aclimatarse de nuevo a los entrenos, fue muchos días parado, pero bien, las sensaciones son buenas, después de haber jugado un rato el otro día, te deja esa sensación que la forma de jugar del equipo sigue.
Suárez wasn't elegant, but he was relentless. Defenders hated facing him. He pressed, fought, and finished with instinct. His suspension delayed his debut, but that time mattered. He studied Messi. He learned Neymar's movements. When he finally played, he was ready. When Messi, Neymar, and Suárez shared the pitch, expectations were huge, but chemistry took time. Roles overlapped. The attack felt crowded. At times, the trio looked disconnected. This is where it could have failed. Instead, one tactical decision changed everything. Messi drifted deeper and wider. Neymar attacked freely from the left. Suárez became the central reference point. The roles were clear. The balance was found. Suddenly, Barcelona were unpredictable again. Messi controlled tempo. Neymar injected chaos. Suárez delivered ruthlessness. Defenders had no correct decision to make. Confidence followed quickly. Passes became instinctive. Runs were anticipated. Goals were shared without ego. Barcelona's attack transformed from predictable to terrifying. Matches that once felt tense were decided in moments, and this was only the beginning. As the tactical balance finally settled, Barcelona began to look like a team that fully understood its own power. The hesitation that once defined their play disappeared. Attacks flowed with confidence. Decisions were made instinctively. What once felt like an experiment now felt inevitable. Messi no longer carried the burden alone. Neymar and Suárez were no longer additions. They were foundations. Barcelona's attack no longer relied on control for control's sake. It relied on precision, timing, and intent. Early doubts surrounding the trio faded quickly. Matches stopped being tests and started becoming statements. When MSN clicked, games often felt decided long before the final whistle. Opponents weren't just afraid of losing, they were afraid of how exposed they could be. In domestic competition, Barcelona became relentless. Defensive blocks that once frustrated them were dismantled through movement rather than possession. Neymar isolated fullbacks and attacked with confidence, forcing defenders into uncomfortable situations. Suárez dragged center-backs out of position, creating chaos in the middle. Messi exploited the spaces with ruthless efficiency. The brilliance of MSN was that they didn't all need to shine at once. One moment from any of the three could decide a match. A Messi pass, a Neymar dribble, a Suárez finish. That unpredictability made defending Barcelona feel hopeless. What truly separated MSN from other great attacking units was adaptability. When patience was required, Messi slowed the game and dictated rhythm. When intensity was needed, Suárez pressed aggressively and forced mistakes. When creativity was lacking, Neymar took risks others wouldn't dare attempt. Barcelona could change personality mid-match without losing identity. As the Champions League progressed, a sense of inevitability began to surround Barcelona. Opponents prepared cautiously, but caution only delayed the damage. High-pressure environments suited MSN perfectly. Away nights, hostile crowds, knockout football. These were the stages where their chemistry shone brightest. European defenses had no answer. Double-mark Messi and space opened elsewhere. Focus on Neymar and Suárez punished centrally. Track Suárez and Messi arrived late. Every defensive decision created another problem. Efficiency defined this phase of the season. Barcelona didn't need countless chances. MSN punished the smallest errors: a loose touch, a missed clearance, a moment of hesitation. Matches shifted instantly and irreversibly. Confidence soon turned into expression. Neymar played with freedom and joy. Messi controlled games with calm authority. Suárez attacked every ball with desperation and hunger. Big wins stopped feeling special because they became routine. As trophies came into sight, pressure increased, but MSN embraced it. Finals and decisive matches brought out their sharpest performances. When the season demanded authority, Barcelona delivered it. The treble wasn't the result of a single match or moment. It was months of dominance, adaptation, and belief. Barcelona had returned to the summit of world football, powered by an attack that redefined what a front three could be. And instead of slowing down, MSN prepared to go again. By the following season, MSN were no longer an emerging force. They were the standard. Every attacking trio in world football was compared to them, and almost all fell short. Barcelona entered the season not chasing success, but defending it. What defined this version of MSN was maturity. They no longer relied purely on instinct or flair. They understood when to accelerate games and when to suffocate opponents through control. Messi dictated tempo like a conductor. Neymar became more decisive, balancing flair with efficiency. Suárez evolved into a complete striker, equally dangerous with his movement, pressing, and finishing. The numbers reflected the dominance. Goals came in clusters. Hat tricks felt routine. Assists piled up. Matches that once felt competitive turned into showcases of attacking football. MSN weren't just scoring. They were dismantling teams systematically. Then adversity arrived. Lionel Messi suffered an injury that ruled him out for weeks. In previous seasons, this would have destabilized everything. Barcelona without Messi often looked lost. But this time, something different happened. Barcelona didn't collapse. Responsibility shifted naturally. Neymar stepped up as the creative leader, demanding the ball and driving attacks. Suárez became unstoppable, scoring at an astonishing rate and carrying the team with pure hunger. Without Messi, Barcelona didn't merely survive, they thrived. This period destroyed the long-standing belief that Barcelona depended on one man. MSN had rewritten that narrative completely. For the first time in years, Barcelona proved they could dominate even without Messi on the pitch. When Messi returned, the trio didn't reset. They elevated. Confidence bordered on arrogance, but it was rooted in belief rather than disrespect. They trusted themselves completely. If chances came, they would finish them. Records continued to fall. Historic unbeaten runs were established. MSN were no longer compared to contemporaries. They were measured against the greatest attacks in football history. But football always tests even the greatest teams. As spring approached, fatigue crept in. Opponents adapted. Pressure intensified. Barcelona began to stumble. Losses arrived at the worst possible moment. Momentum faded. A season that once looked destined for another treble suddenly felt fragile. And then came Paris. The first leg against PSG was a collapse. Barcelona were dismantled, overrun, and outplayed. The scoreline felt final. Across the football world, the tie was declared over before the second leg even began. Barcelona were written off, but inside the Camp Nou, belief refused to die.
Pues que estamos a mitad de eliminatoria y que si un rival puede marcarnos 4 goles a nosotros, nosotros le podemos marcar 6.
The second leg didn't begin with caution. It began with urgency. From the opening whistle, Barcelona attacked with desperation. Suárez scored early, igniting hope. A defensive error gifted another goal. The impossible began to feel imaginable. Messi converted from the spot and belief exploded. Then PSG scored, crushing momentum. Barcelona needed more. Time was running out. This is where Neymar took control. A free kick, a penalty, one final perfectly weighted pass. In minutes, football history was rewritten. Barcelona completed the impossible. That night became one of the defining moments of modern football. It represented everything MSN stood for: belief, courage, and refusal to surrender. But greatness often comes at a cost. After the emotional peak of that unforgettable Champions League comeback, maintaining balance became increasingly difficult. Moments like that lift teams to impossible heights, but they also leave scars. The energy required to reach such a peak is rarely sustainable. Slowly, reality began to creep back in. Injuries returned. Performances fluctuated. Opponents no longer approached Barcelona with fear alone, but with belief that they could compete. European dominance faded and Barcelona exited the Champions League earlier than expected. The magic was still there in flashes, but the consistency that once defined MSN was slipping. Off the pitch, uncertainty grew louder. Luis Enrique announced that he would step away at the end of the season.
That I will not be the coach of FC Barcelona next season.
With that decision, the stability that had nurtured MSN began to dissolve. A new era was coming, and no one was quite sure what it would look like. Change was no longer a possibility. It was inevitable. For Neymar, the conflict had been building for some time. He had grown into one of the most influential players in the world. He had delivered iconic moments, carried the team during Messi's absence, and played a leading role in one of football's greatest comebacks. Yet no matter how brilliant he was, the narrative always returned to Lionel Messi. Neymar was a superstar, but Messi was the center of gravity. Individually, Neymar wanted more. More responsibility. More recognition. More freedom to define an era in his own image. He didn't want to be remembered as a supporting act in someone else's story. He wanted to be the main character. At the same time, Barcelona themselves were entering a period of uncertainty. Leadership transitions loomed. Long-term planning became unclear. The clarity and confidence that once defined the club were fading. MSN were still producing magic on the pitch, but the environment around them no longer felt permanent. When Paris Saint-Germain made their move, football was changed forever. The release clause wasn't just triggered, it was weaponized. The transfers shattered records and expectations. It wasn't simply about money. It was about power, ambition, and statement. Neymar wasn't being pulled away. He chose to leave. And in that moment, MSN ended. There was no farewell season, no gradual decline. One day the trio existed, the next it didn't. The chemistry that had terrorized Europe vanished instantly. What remained were memories, numbers, and the realization that something truly rare had been lost. Barcelona tried to respond the only way modern football knows how, with signings and spending. Big names arrived, huge sums were invested. But talent alone could not recreate what MSN had been. The club searched for replacements in the market, when what they had lost was understanding. Luis Suárez continued for a while, still driven by hunger, still delivering goals. But time waits for no one. His movement slowed, the press softened, and eventually the club moved on from him, closing another chapter of the golden era. Lionel Messi remained. He always did. But even Messi couldn't restore what MSN had been. Without Neymar, and eventually without Suárez, the burden returned to his shoulders. Barcelona drifted further from the standard they had once set. European nights became painful again. The dominance faded. Years later, the three paths would briefly cross once more, but never in the same way. Different leagues, different roles, different stages of life. The spark that once felt effortless belonged to another time. Looking back, MSN stands apart not just because of the numbers, but because of how complete they were. They had everything a front three could possibly need. The greatest playmaker and scorer the game has ever seen. One of the most ruthless strikers of his generation. One of the most daring and creative attackers football has produced. They didn't compete for spotlight. They shared it. They didn't limit each other. They freed each other. Messi didn't need to force moments. Suárez didn't need to create chances for himself. Neymar didn't need to carry the entire attack alone. Each player was better because the others existed. That freedom is what made MSN special. They weren't built to chase individual awards. They were built to win. They trusted each other in moments where selfishness would have been easier. Goals were shared. Assists were celebrated. Success was collective. In just 3 seasons together, MSN redefined attacking football. They broke records that may never be touched. They created moments that will live forever. They turned fear into expectation and brilliance into routine. More importantly, they reminded the football world of something timeless, that chemistry matters as much as talent, that timing matters as much as ability, and that greatness is fragile. MSN didn't last long, and that is exactly why they are remembered the way they are. For a brief window, everything aligned. The right players, the right system, the right moment in football history. And when it ended forever. Messi, Suárez, Neymar, not just a front three, not just an era, a brief moment of footballing perfection.